Good evening and welcome to the Gersnet Friday night preview podcast. It's Friday the 5th of December. It's absolutely rotten out there, so I hope you are sitting somewhere warm listening to this. I'm your host tonight, I'm John McCallum. I'm being joined by Stewart Weir, and we will go through the ups and downs of the week. We'll look ahead to the weekend, and we might even have a wee chat about that magnificent, fascinating World Cup draw that took up, I think, about 3 days earlier on today. Gersnet, of course, is the independent Rangers podcast made by fans for fans, where the content is free, and it's not just the podcast we have at Gersnet. We have a forum, we have articles, we have social media, and we also have a history archive, so please go and check them out. And we would encourage you to subscribe to the pod wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss any. Before we do any of that, let me just mention our sponsors, who are Forrest Precision Engineering. They are a Glasgow-based engineering company, and they have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. And we are delighted that once again they are backing our podcast. You can find out more about them by visiting their website, forestprecisioneng.com. You might also be interested in the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge. It's a stunning hospitality area within the main stand. And for information on how to book this space, you email the club directly at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now, I'm joined tonight by Stewart, a man who, of course, embodies the spirit of Christmas, as we were just saying earlier on there. I wouldn't necessarily want him coming into your house in the middle of the night. Stewart, let's start with the World Cup. Brazil, Morocco, Haiti, a country with no functioning government, overrun with corruption and poverty. That's not a bad game for Haiti to start off against.
Enough about Holland. Yes.
What did you make of that? Aside from the nonsense of the draw,
God,
what did you make of the?
I have seen shorter Netflix series. In all seriousness, I mean, you were sitting there and wondering what was going to happen next, and it was only Scotland could get into the draw for the World Cup finals, and it take 8 minutes just to find who they were going to play. Oh, you can't play them, so we'll put you in here, and you can't play them, so we'll put you in there. And all the time, you just knew it was going to be Scotland. And it could only happen to Scotland that after a 28-year sabbatical from playing in the biggest tournament in the world, we end up with 66% or 2/3 of the teams that we played in the last World Cup. Only Scotland could do that. I think, you know something, I think ultimately, I'm left underwhelmed and subdued by the draw. Other people might get excited, well, especially if they've not seen Scotland playing in a World Cup, but I can go back far enough to I've seen Scotland playing Brazil in 74, in 82, in 90, and 98. That's 4 times I've seen Scotland play Brazil. Brazil are not the attraction that they once were, and they're certainly not the attraction as far as I'm concerned. If you're a Scotland supporter, or you take an interest in the national team, because you've played them before, you want to see, I would love dearly to see Scotland playing if France or Argentina.
Argentina, that's the exciting one. A chance to play the holders, a chance to see Messi playing against us.
Correct.
I was hoping for Argentina as well. Listen, I know what you're saying, Brazil aren't it's not a team of 1970, but at the same time, I still think they're better than us.
Certainly their fans are. I would always take the Samba babes against hairy-arsed Scotsmen in kilts. So
there's probably going to be a bit of that, and that's a good incentive for Danilo to start scoring goals to get in that Brazil squad for the World Cup.
Who knows? There might be a catastrophe. A plane might be captured or taken hostage or kidnapped or something like that, and he might end up there. I still think they'd be running around looking for probably folk in Scotland that might have a Brazilian granny, or maybe even just have a Brazilian rather than picking him.
Right, let's move on.
I'm here all week.
Listen, talking of comedy, let's start with Dundee United game on Wednesday night. Let's look back at the Monday night game, of which there was some comedy defending. It has to be said. We missed some sitters. All three of our centre forwards should have scored. I don't think there's any debate about that. At the same time, we saw a proper goal of the season contender, absolute screamer. Yeah. Who knew he could do that? A last minute penalty. What did you make of the 2-2 draw? What was your overall impression of it before we look at a couple of specific items about it?
Well, I said on the night on Wednesday night, I thought the goal was just said, well, describe it how you wish, a screamer or a pile driver, an exocet, a rocket. All of these words were used to describe that goal. For me, it was reminiscent of the kind of goal that George Alberts used to score. Used to ping it in. It never lifted more than about 2 feet off the ground and just flew away into the corner. I thought it was an exceptional goal. What I will take in its entirety is, though, John, that I think it's more and more obvious with every 90 minutes that Rangers play under the new coach or manager, whatever way you want to describe him. It becomes more obvious, and it has done to him very early on, I think, that this squad is not fit for purpose. You go back, and I've said this before, you go back to the great Rangers revolution of 1986 when suddenly Graham Souness arrived. And people will say, oh, he brought in the England goalkeeper, England centre-half, he brought in Roberts, he brought in these guys. He did so, but it was a progression of bringing in players that he needed. He stiffened up the team by bringing in, old stages a bit like Jimmy Nicholl, guys that knew he could do a turn. And over the piece, he brought in other guys, Avi Cohen and Trevor Francis, guys he had a knowledge of, to stiffen that team up and make it more battle hardened and toughened, while still carrying a real threat with the players that he had. And even the local residents that were still there, guys like Dave McPherson, Derek Ferguson, Ian Durant, McCoy, Fleck, they all played a part. I think, however, on this occasion, you are looking at Roll coming in and finding the cupboards bare. There is nothing there that he can actually assemble into a team, because every component part is susceptible to failure, especially, I would say, in central defence, and particularly up front. You are looking at guys that there isn't somebody who's in a bit of a rich vein of form and other people let them down. You're talking about guys that are needing 2 and 3 and 4 chances just to make the goalkeeper have a save. And that is, you're never going to do anything with that team. I'll hold my hands up here just now and I'll say my criticism of Dessers and Morella's and one or two others over the piece, looking at these guys, was totally unjustified and over the top, because each of these guys look as if they're potential Ballon d'Or winners compared to these guys who are more Ballon d'Or winners, and even then they couldn't hit it and they presented them with one.
Yeah, no, Dessers looks like Haaland currently, doesn't it? It's got bad when you're really missing him. It was a funny game. Yeah, I've said this. I had a text from my cousin. My cousin, I kind of texted my son as well, and we kind of text each other during games. And my cousin was losing it on Wednesday night. He just was not enjoying it at all. He was furious with how things were going. And I was saying to him that I actually thought it was probably our best performance in spells. We did dominate the game for large spells. We created chances. We couldn't bloody score them, but we created them. I thought we kind of created. We were the ones dictating the tempo of the match. I think the way Dundee United played helped. I think they were a bit more open than teams often are against us, and I think that definitely helped us. But I did think we were better in certain aspects. Our centre halves are a huge concern. Our fullbacks are nothing special. Our centre halves are a massive concern. And because of that, because the defence isn't playing well and because the forwards aren't playing well, the midfield is struggling because it's not being left to do its own job. And I think you're particularly seeing that in Raskin just now. And I've heard a few folk criticise Raskin and saying his form's terrible just now. His form isn't great. No one's form's particularly good. But I do think he's trying to do too much just now. I think he just needs to focus on doing his own game. And, I don't know, Gassama's another one. Gassama, he can beat two players and then beat them again. He's beautiful to watch. But he's doing bugger all with it after he's done that. His cross is going to be overhit. It's going to hit the first man. He's going to make the wrong pass. He's a frustrating player because you can see it's there. And I look at him and I think, is your final ball so poor just now because the forwards aren't making the right runs, midfielders aren't arriving late for you to, is it because of that, or is it just, that's why you're playing at the level you're playing, because you don't have that final ball, because you've got everything else?
I'm very, I'm what you're saying there, I'm aware of what you're saying there, and I've been very fortunate over the years to sit with various managers and coaches, especially Rangers managers and coaches, and listen to their kind of philosophy. And, pretty much to a man, all they want is the wingers, the wide guys, to take a touch and go bang. And once you do that, once you get half a yard on somebody, I don't want to sound like some guy who's going to give everybody a history lesson, but if you watch Rangers wingers over the piece, dare I say, even guys like Ted McMinn would do it. Just beat somebody for pace and get the ball into the middle. Yeah. And once you do that, and once that ball's coming in, assuming it's not going behind the byline and behind the goalkeeper, as soon as it's going in front of the goals, that is then where the strikers need to make up their mind where they're going to go. If it's overhit, you need to be having somebody come in at the back post, so that's the opposite winger, or you need somebody attacking from midfield. There's a method of scoring goals. It's difficult for Rangers just now, and it has been for a period of time, where if you only play with one striker, you've lessened your chances of scoring goals by 50% immediately.
Yeah.
In the past, there was always a double act, whether it was, McCoist and Fleck, as I mentioned there, or McCoist and Johnson, Drinkle and McCoist, whoever it might have been, and even latterly, you go back to the likes of Naismith,
Miller and Boyd, Purzo and Novo, absolutely, yeah, I know exactly.
It was a double act. So therefore, you listen, and I take another lesson from the likes of Graham Souness, who was adamant that if you set up defensively, and Watersmith was the same, and Dick Advocat was the same, you only have to score one goal to win a game. If you don't concede, you only need to score one goal. The problem is with Rangers, they're conceding so many goals. They're now needing to score 2s and 3s and 4s. And if one goals are difficult for them, how the hell are you going to score 4? I know people will say, "Oh, look at this game and look at that game." Those are exceptions to the rules. You only have to watch Rangers for 90 minutes or a number of 90 minutes to realise that they might be creating chances, but the percentage that they're taking is way down. It's less. I would say it's less than a quarter. And when you do that, you're in real trouble.
Yeah. One criticism I would make of Rowe is he is persistent with certain players, which is surprising and puzzling. And I'm going to say what a lot of people have been saying. I look at the bench and I look at Curtis and I look at Cameron, and I wonder what they've done. What have they done in training or in the dressing room that they can't get into this team currently? Cameron scored, I think it was 14 goals from midfield last season for Dundee. Curtis is still our top scoring centre, or still our top scoring forward player, and he's played the fewest minutes of all of them. I don't want to heap too much pressure on them. I'm not suggesting that they are they're top players. They're not. Curtis is a young player. Cameron's come in from Dundee, but when I see him bringing on Asgard, I don't know why. Asgard should just be towed out to sea and sunk. He's a total waste of time, him. He has all the tools and no clue how to use them. But when I see him getting brought on towards the end, I go, well, why are you not bringing on Cameron? You know, what's gone wrong here? That I think. Are you any thoughts on why? What's happening there?
It was put to me, and at first I didn't agree with it and didn't really concur with what was said to me. But the more I thought about it, and the more, the person that was actually saying this to me, the more I listened and thought about what they had actually said, the more I believed that actually this might be some kind of wrong master plan, not to throw the young guys in and not to throw them into the wolves, because he's got enough players there that can't play without heaping criticism and pressure on young guys he might think can play. It'd be much better keeping some of these boys back and then saying, right, when I get the players in, either defensively or in attack, that I really want, now's your chance to prove that you can actually play as part of that team. Whereas just now, I think he's still making the point that there's some of these guys just aren't good enough to be at Rangers. And I think he's actually singling them out now for not just criticism, I think he's singling them out now to the ownership of Rangers. Now do you see what I'm saying? You know, I don't think there was the disappearances out the door of various personnel without it being, the manager having a say in that. And I think, honestly, that we're at a stage now where he can't wait until January. He needs players in desperately to make a change. And I think some of those younger guys might be getting kept back. He doesn't want to put them under the type of pressure that others have seen in the past. Therefore, he's maybe telling them, you'll get your chance. You know, I back that up by the fact there's none of these young boys, maybe they're not in a position to do it, but there's none of these boys saying, if you don't give me a chance, I want to go out and loan somewhere. There's none of them saying that. They're willing to bide their time, and if they're willing to bide their time, they've been told something that's not been made public.
Yeah, maybe. Certainly, I noticed the comments today about Barjami, manager saying, look, he didn't come morning, he just worked hard in training, he waited for his chance has come and he's taken it. And I did wonder if that was maybe a pointed remark to some others, if he was maybe using that as an example of how he wants you to behave in training. I don't know. It's hard to I find it puzzling though.
The best or worst example of that was Gattuso, who was told you'll need to work a bit harder and basically just went around kicking folk to such an extent where Walter Smith had to put him in the team just to safeguard the rest of the squad.
Stop kicking everybody else.
Basically go out and kick the opposition rather than kick your own teammates. So there's a bit of man management to come in and all of this. Listen, I genuinely don't think we're going to see anything very much this season until after January, when either you clear the decks with some of the players that you've actually got there, or you bring one or two players in that will do you a turn or do you a job. And, maybe that's wishful thinking, maybe that's wishing or thinking something that a whole lot of Rangers fans are hoping for after Santa's been. But you know that there's a stack of players in there who are just not up to it. And it was interesting to hear Roll saying, I want people to understand what it is to play for the Rangers. Now, that's a statement in itself. That's the kind of thing guys that have died in the wool, Scots, that have come in the past and saying, I know what it is to play for Rangers. The fact that he's actually come out and say that, it might just be mouth music, but I honestly think he's looked at it and said, this is what we need to do. And remember, here's a guy who, when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, was doing everything. He was a coach, the manager, the agent, the
accountant, by the looks of the books.
Correct. The chief scout. He was a guy that booked their training pitches, their pre-season training, did all of that. So for him to come into a football club and suddenly be presented with a team, so to speak, and he does this and he does that and he does that, and him realise that he was at a club that was absolutely bereft of finance and was at death's door literally, and he's seeing this Rangers model being sold to him that's apparently well actually quite well to do, yet it's not working. I don't think he's looked at that and gone, I'm not going to be here very long, either because these guys have not given me the tools to work with, or I'm going to go and find somewhere else.
No, it is interesting because I was going to ask you later, but you've kind of answered it already. I mean, is it just a case now for role of surviving until January? Or just get through, because he's unbeaten in the league, but at the same time, there's a lot of draws in there. Damn lies and statistics, I mean, I think he's made a difference since he came in, and I'm willing to believe he has something about him. We won't know until he gets, a few of his own players around him. But it's a funny season. Celtic have just appointed a guy who, frankly, I had never heard of. I'd never heard of that guy before he became linked with them. He just took the Columbus Crew to 8th in the league or something like that. I mean, you're not looking at that guy's CV and thinking, wow, they've really gone out and, he might turn out to be brilliant. I read his first interview. He sounds like an absolute walloper. He talks that, management speak garbage. So, who knows how that's going to go? He as I said, he's come in. He might turn out to be very, very good. Time will tell. But this season isn't over if we can just get to January and strengthen this team, because this team is not winning anything as it stands.
No.
It's just not winning anything as it stands. We're so poor up front. Defensively, we're all over the place, and our midfield is hot and cold. Let's describe it that way. At times it does okay, and at other times it really doesn't. It's not scoring enough goals for a start. But Celtic could implode again. We just don't know what's around the corner here, because, there's change. Any change is going to cause some level of upset. I've read things that he plays a funny 3-5-3 or 3-5-2 or 3-5-1. He's funny. He's something funny thing.
If he's 3-5-3, he's cheating.
We studied Dynamo Kiev from 1946.
Even I've worked that one. I think just to basically, cap off what I was saying and what you've been saying. Once January comes, I think that is ultimately going to give the indication how the rest of this season is going to go.
Yeah, we just got to stay in touch until then. I think that's all we can do. Just keep in touch until then. Don't let it get to 16 points gap, which just will be too much. If we can keep in touch till then, who knows? Yeah. Looking forward to tomorrow night, 8 o'clock on a Saturday night in Kilmarnock. The glamour of it all. Do you see many changes from Wednesday night to tomorrow night?
I don't think. Listen, a couple of weeks back, I was saying that Rowe can try this and he can try this and he can do the next thing. Ultimately, he's stuck with the players he's got.
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, okay, you mentioned the youngsters and maybe suggested they should get a chance. I would agree with you. I think there'd be enough forgiveness amongst the Rangers support to know that these young guys are trying their best and they've never been in that situation. And it's a bloody hard ask for you to go from, youth reserve football, whatever way you want to describe it, and suddenly get pitched in at the deep end and told, now you're playing for Rangers, perform. And if you're a winger, we want to see reminiscences of Brian Laudrup and a bit of Davy Cooper and some Mark Walters in there. And if you're a striker, just think yourself as being Ali McCoy. It's not going to happen. That takes time. So I think he'll persevere with what he's got. You're right, the league results are not great, but the whole thing about the being undefeated over a period of time, and I have to say, late as the penalty came the other night there, it showed you that we're still trying right to the last. And
it was deserved. I mean, we deserved to get something from that game, and it was a deserved penalty as well. I mean, it was a slow ball penalty.
And touching on what you'd said previously, there were periods in that where actually you thought, I won't say they were great, but Rangers are playing okay here.
Yeah.
And it was as good and okay as anybody's seen in some period of time. They looked as if they actually had half an idea, half a semblance of knowing what they were trying to do. But you got to a stage, years ago, the old Driver Cup had a line that went from the 18-yard line on the penalty box and right out to the
touchlines.
Back the touchlines. And watching that, you thought the same markings had been put in the pitch. And once Rangers got into that last 18 yards, that last third of the pitch, anything they tried or anything they thought they were going to try or anything they'd worked on just evaporated. They just looked like complete strangers who didn't know if they were going to run up the tunnel or run out the exit door. It was pantomime stuff, really.
You have to assume that if they're fit, Myoma, Jigga, Fernandez and Tavernier and Butland are our back five. I can't imagine any change. Aaron's looked like he might have picked up a knock towards the end of the game in Dundee United. I don't know if it was serious or not. So I'm assuming that's our back five. You assume Raskin will start. You assume Gassama will start. Probably Barron, who's been doing okay. I always Barron's one of these players that flatters to deceive a little bit. Lots of industry and breaking up play, and you do need a bit of that. I was not sure that he creates a huge amount, but he's been doing okay. So you assume he's there, and in the end, he has to play at least two of Chermeti, Miovski, and Danilo. The only hinted at change today was Moore, that Moore might be fit.
Yeah.
Or he says he is fit. Whether he'll play from the start, come off the bench, whether he'll play at all, would make any sign of it, I don't know.
Where he plays as well, does he play as a kind of slightly wider guy, or does he play as a 10?
I think I think the 10's what he wants, and I think he's been trying Danilo in there, he's tried Asgard in there. I think Moore is probably the one who's performed best in that position for him. That's what I would expect him to play. Perhaps that was potentially the only obvious change if everybody's fit. I don't see what else he can do.
No,
he's not going to bring Sterling back at Kilmarnock. So we have to go with what we've got. One thing he said in the press conference, because Kilmarnock will be a different kettle of fish from Dundee United. They'll not be as open. They'll be aggressive. They'll be defensive. But Roll, who's obviously no experience of playing against Kilmarnock, said an interesting thing I thought today. He said a lot of teams have won there before. He didn't actually say that. He had these words all muddled up, but that's what he meant. A lot of teams have won there before. This is a mindset. It's not about looking for excuses. Go there, take the points, and go home. And I thought that was, it's quite interesting way of putting it. Because we do, even on the podcast, we do make a big deal of the bloody horrible pitch, and it's going to be a cold, wet Saturday night on that horrible plastic pitch, and you got to get out of your head. Is it just about mentality when you go to places like Kilmarnock? Is it just about going there with the right mentality? And is he right about that, or is there more to it?
I think he's saying these things, and there's two things in his mind just now. One is the expectation of what he wants or what he would like to see, and the other side is the acceptance of what he'll see. I don't think he's accepting what he's seeing, unlike the players who are accepting at times being second best and not putting in a shift and blaming everybody for who they're playing with. I don't think he accepts that, and I think he's trying to get players into the mindset they shouldn't accept it either. The other thing, if you don't accept it, the expectation level rises because you have to perform. And we are going to go in the circles here, for the foreseeable future. Not you and I, but in general, because if you get it right in attack, you take so much pressure off the rest of the team by scoring the goals. You can have a lapse here. You can make a mistake there. If you're scoring the chances that are being created, all these different, as you say, lies, damn lies, and statistics, you can make people look like anything. Strikers great if you score goals. There's one key element of a striker, and again, you speak to enough managers, and they'll all tell you the same. It's when you score the goals and who you score against. It's not necessarily how many. Having 10 goals after 4 games and you've scored against Morton, Falkirk, St Johnstone and somebody else, whereas you might only score 3, but you've scored against Celtic, Hearts and Hibs.
Aye.
And that's the difference. You take your chances. You look at Maurice Johnson in his first season. Where did he score? 12 goals. But his first 3 goals were against Aberdeen, against Hearts, and against Celtic. That's what you needed to do.
And they were winning goals as well. Yeah, you're dead right. You're dead right. A player, well, a while ago now, but a player who used to fall into that was Lovenkrantz. Lovenkrantz scored big goals.
Yes.
He was never prolific, but he scored big goals in big games.
That's right.
And you know, but you still need the players. You said that they score against Falkirk. We need players who can score against Falkirk in the team as well. Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that. I just wondered if that's his thing just now. If that's how he's getting through this, he's saying, look, it's got to be about mentality. You know, he can't make these players. You can't make forwards score goals. You know, if Chermetti just looks like he's not very good. You know,
it looks as if George Weah has recommended him to Graham Souness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's no far off that. It's a shame, but he just, the more you watch, he was, when he first came in and you thought, he's no great, is he? Maybe he just needs games. He's not played much football. Maybe he just needs a run of games. You find the pace, and then you'll start to see. But I don't know. I've seen him a few times now, and I'm not seeing it at all. Majovsky, I've no idea what's happened to him. Like everybody else, I thought he was a decent signing. I thought he was a guy who did pretty well at Aberdeen before, scored a whole variety of different goals. He doesn't look like he knows how to play football now. Danilo, I don't know. I don't know what Danilo's best position is.
Frankie sent through the notes there about different strikers that Rangers have had, and just having you talk about Sebo and Austin Stat, and remember the fox in the box.
Aye.
Francis Jeffers, who he looked less of a fox in the box, looked more like roadkill, given he did what he actually did on the pitch. So there's been dozens of strikers over the years that have attempted to be the Rangers number 9.
And who's? I mean, I was going to have this as our kind of last point. I don't know there's much more to say about the Kilmarnock game. You and I've you've probably seen more years than we want to count up of watching Rangers. We've had some bad centre forwards in our time. I remember Billy Urquhart. I remember Gordon Dalziel. I know Gordon Dalziel's gone on and he's had quite a good broadcasting career, and he had quite a good football career, but not at Rangers. He didn't. At Rangers, he did not look the part when he was at Rangers.
You could pick a whole point. The point you make there is an extremely good one. There are some players who couldn't live with the expectation or pressure of being the Rangers striker and went elsewhere and carved out a career.
Yep. You
look at the guys you just mentioned there, Gordon Dalziel. You look at the likes of Martin Henderson. Martin Henderson did pretty well after he left Rangers. Other players looked really good after they left Rangers. They couldn't live with that expectation.
Yeah.
So, other players, in fact, recently have gone and left Ibrox and suddenly been scoring goals for fun. But I just don't see it in any of these guys that are actually there.
No.
Chermetti is, whoever did the edit on his DVD highlights reel deserves
I think it was Thelwell's son, frankly.
Well, deserves an
Oscar.
Deserves a BAFTA. I think he did it with AI. You know what I mean? To make him look something he isn't. I for the life of me, you're talking about balls bobbling off his shins. His first touch is away in a different direction to the goal. He just hasn't got it, and I don't see him having it. So what do you do with a guy who you spent £9 million on, probably paying a few quid a week in wages,
Aye.
How do you get him out the door in January, and how long term do you get him out the door full stop? I mean, we talked about Dessers there. Rangers still getting, I don't know, 4.5, 5 million, something like that for Dessers apparently. Now, I don't know how much of that is sort of creative accountancy. I'm not sure. But you don't see any of the current stock suddenly being able to come up with figures like that. And that is a worrying thing. How do you fund Rangers new owners number 2 in a model that's going to work, having spent as much money on the first version that's been a complete and unmitigated disaster?
Yeah, no, recruitment's been horrendous. So you want to pick your worst Rangers strikers that you've seen? You want to finish on that high note tonight, on the worst ones you've seen?
Orsenstat takes a bit of beating.
Yeah. Now, there's a guy coming towards the end of his career. To be, all I would say in his defence was he was coming towards the end of his career.
Jeffers.
Yeah.
The big guy, Argentinian guy, Nieto. Remember him?
No, not really.
Alex McLeish brought him in. He I don't know. He just. I
don't remember him.
Right. Well, he was another one. You can go far enough back. Guys like, it might have been that they didn't get a chance. When you've got Derek Johnson and Gordon Smith banging goals in left, right, and centre, it's very difficult to give other people a chance. I think maybe Urquhart fell into that category then.
Yeah.
I think maybe Chris Robertson probably fell into that category as well. There are a whole bunch of players who left Rangers in the 70s and into the 80s who went elsewhere and still had a career. So,
yeah. I mean, there was guys we brought in the 80s for big signs, Colin West, Mark Falco, guys with reputations who went on to have good careers. Some of them had good careers before they joined us, but on to have good careers after. Didn't look the part at all at Rangers. But the guy at
Rangers. Well, the guy said that's not. I was saving him to last. He ultimately is. I think he had a part-time job with Stagecoach or something like that, because he never looked as if he was interested in and one of the guys who's criticised and I would say unfairly criticised because of the price tag that he came for would have been Tor Andrew Flo. Tor Andrew Flo, people forget, he cost 12 million. Rangers got another 7 million quid back from Sunderland when they sold him. Because they appreciated he was a good player. He also had a track record where he scored a goal every 2 games, which is, and other people saying, what about him? What about him? What about him? Without actually realising the job that they actually did.
No, Flo did well. I mean, Flo, he came into a team that was in decline at a time when Celtic were on an incline. And because he came in for so much money, there was so much expectation. But, again, the fee is not his. The fee is not his fault. He did a job. He scored goals. He just wasn't the player that we needed at that time. But hey ho. So listen, I think we'll before we get too far into how many duds. I saw a stat during the week there actually. Our two starting fullbacks, Tavernier and Magoma, have scored more league goals than our 3 starting centre forwards, and I think that in itself tells a tale. So listen, thanks for your time, Stewart, and as ever, thanks for your insights and your thoughts on the game. If I can just remind everybody that the podcast is available on a variety of different platforms. Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and of course Spotify. A last reminder that the game is actually tomorrow evening. I think it's an 8 o'clock start or something strange like that for reasons only known to the people who signed the TV contracts. There will be a podcast on Sunday night. Ben and Alex will be chatting away about the game at Kilmarnock and having a look ahead to what's coming up. And it only remains for me to say thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Thank you.